How you doing, Happy? I'm Bob Barker.
Wow, what an honor. Nice to meet you.
Looks like you and I are going to be playing together today.
That's funny. Who am I really playing with?
This is a pro-am, Happy. Each golfer is playing with a celebrity.
Wow.
You know, Nick Faldo and I won this thing last year, and I'd like to win it again this year.
All right, I'll do my best.
Hey, Gilmore, you suck, you jackass.
Why don't you shut the hell up? I'd love to punch that guy in the face right now, but I can't, because I'd get in trouble. I bet you got a lot of that on Let's Make a Deal.
It's the Price is Right, Happy.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It happens. Let's play some golf.
Okay.
Jackass. Whoa! The club went further than the ball.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another week of Muskies on Tap. Bringing to you episode 80 here on this cold November night. It's knocking way below freezing tonight, and we had mega winds from the northwest, and old man winter is on his way. But you never know, could randomly have one of those heat waves in November or something like that. But anyways, let's introduce who we have on here tonight. We're missing one, but we're adding one. So first off, I'll introduce Max, my brother. How you doing tonight, Max?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, fun weekend up in the North Woods. Unfortunately, muskie season is coming to a close here soon. I think I can count probably, and God willing and weather willing, I think I can still count on two hands the number of days I'll probably have left on the water. But yeah, hoping the fortunes change a little bit for yours truly. The muskie gods have been quite unkind to me this fall. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
we'll see if that changes here late this year. I was able to sneak out with you, Gus, obviously one day this weekend, just on Sunday, and we unfortunately got blanked, swinging for the fences once again. So maybe one of those days will pay off. I don't know. Do you have any reason maybe why things didn't go our way on Sunday?
I'm not really sure. I think it's just the fall and
Just
you.
having me in the boat.
Because like the conditions were awesome
I
and
thought they were
the muskies
great.
were dumb. I mean, we chose a very, very difficult lake, some high pressure, super educated big fish. So that we had against us, of course, but we had low hanging clouds, low winds, misting all day. I would have thought one of them would have opened their yappers, but
Yeah,
that's what it is for November.
I know. It's like I was just hoping and praying for a great weather day, at least one this fall. It feels like every time I've been out in the boat, it's either blowing 40 miles an hour or it's, 82 degrees in October. Just felt like I really couldn't catch a break. And then here, we get gifted this just prime musky day, humid, low hanging clouds, like you said, a little mist, nice light variable winds, and just wasn't in the cards. So hopefully that will change in one of these last few outings. But yeah, like you mentioned, Gus, we're down a member here this evening. But why don't you go ahead and introduce our special guest we have on, who's gonna play co-host, and he's got some big shoes to fill, but I'm pretty confident that he's gonna have a little bit more to bring to the table on the musky side of things this evening. So why don't you go ahead and introduce him, Gus?
For sure. Yeah, here on tonight we got Austin Wiggerman down in southern Wisconsin. I know that's where you're fishing. You fish the northern Illinois and then Minnesota during the summer, which we're definitely going to get into because I didn't look which episode we had you on last, but I believe we had you in May, I want to say.
Oh,
Mid-May or late May. And we talked a lot about early season fishing for northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin, but we're going to have a lot to talk about on kind of your season as a whole this whole year and how it's been. So, Austin, how are you
oh,
doing tonight?
I'm doing, I would say. I agree right there with you on the fall day that we had. Was also on the water today, and I would say our winds were anywhere from west at 35 down the whole lake of Lake Geneva. Anybody that's been out there makes
Oh man.
understands that's a really fun wind direction if you like 4 footers and like some fast drifts or impossible to stay into the wind. But then by the end of the day, switched to northeast and turned absolutely freezing. But I think our night tonight is gonna be the first night in forever that's dropping below freezing only by 1 degree. And I think we could use it because we've had just a it's just been a ridiculous fall. But I do want to add before I forget, I don't even think Brian exists. Have I ever been on an episode with Brian?
I
I feel like
maybe.
it's just like an AI program that you guys have that just I'm not sure, but yeah, I'd love to meet the guy. He sounds like a really good dude when I listen to all the other episodes, and I don't know what he doesn't like about me, but I kind of like him. You
I mean,
know?
I think it's just kind of becoming like it's got to be just like a running bit at this point. I
Max, it
mean,
kind of just sounds like you and like good fishing for this fall. Like it's just
yeah,
they just don't line up.
yeah, they don't
Yeah.
mix. They don't mix. So I was gonna start right there because I need to talk to somebody. I mean, I get to talk to Gus every day, and he's obviously been still managing quite a few fish as long as I'm not in the North Woods. But I wanna chat with somebody who also has been catching fish because I got to live vicariously through you guys. You did mention it's been a weird fall, but as far as the bike goes, how have things been for you? When did you make the shift down to Geneva and how's that been?
So I would say the fall's been two really big separate waves of life. So I made the move. So let's see. We're gonna rewind just a touch. I went to Minnesota. Plan was always is during the summertime to get away from the hot water temps. Get to Minnesota for like a month, month and a half. This year was so weird because all the way up there was flat calm and insanely warm, so the water temps got all the way up to 80 from what I know. So I shifted my whole schedule to the end of August and packed it into like 1 week of fishing. So starting about the 1st of September, I would say is when I made my move back down to Geneva. And I don't really spend much time at all, if any. I know I spent maybe 3 days of the entire fall, September and beyond on the Fox chain. So it's been Geneva through and through. But fall's been great, honestly. The recent fall has been one of the most trying scenarios of musky fishing. Like it feels like musky fishing. It's not as fun as it was like a month and a half ago, but the numbers of follows you see every day progressively have gone down. The number of bites every day has progressively gone down, but the way that this season's aligned pretty much from the dead start of it all the way through now, the transition periods of water temps between like in spring the spawn took an eternity and for fall this like turnover mid 50 upper 50 degree water temp range is taking forever. I mean, on Lake Geneva, you got like 70% of the water is like got a basin of 80 feet and deeper. So it takes forever to warm up in the spring, and then it takes forever to cool down in the fall. And literally for the last probably 3 weeks for sure, we've been within 4 degrees of the same water temp. It just takes forever to cool down. So right
Mhm.
now, as of today, when I got off, it's like everywhere's like 55 degrees. The favorite water temp you love to see in fall. Um,
Yeah, the dreaded
and especially,
55.
yeah, I mean, 55 is like you get on the water and you see that and you're like, all right, well, let's just get off and then we'll just wait another month for it to be
Yeah.
anything that gets exciting. But no, I mean, it's not been bad. I'll say the last 3 weeks I would chalk up to as very trying, as I mentioned. Just you just got to go put your time in. There's fish scattered almost everywhere. We've had insane winds.
Hmm.
Not too many of those prime weather days that you like get out there. But then when you do, like you guys experienced, it's like, this is what I've been waiting for. And then the fish just don't do anything. And you're like, you see 3 fish in a full outing packed with perfect weather and good moons. And you're like, those were the laziest fish I've seen in the last 3 months. It's like how's that work? So it's been it's been pretty hit. I would say I wouldn't say hit or miss. It's just been I would say about one bite per day, and you got to put your time in. You got to play with
Yeah.
depth spots, patterns, casting angles, everything because there's
Yep.
no rhyme or reason to it. It's just you got to cover ground and find your one active fish for the day.
What's the program right now? Are you still looking at pretty shallow fish with it
Um,
being pre-turnover, I guess, if that's maybe the
See,
case
that's the thing. So
or
here's the funny
unknown.
conversation about the pre-turnover thing.
Hmm.
I thought I like understood the whole turnover concept and how very usually obvious it is on Geneva. Usually, because it's so stupidly clear that whenever you do get some sort of like mixing, you can tell there's like some sediment in the water. It never gets like dirty per se.
Okay.
And I'm gonna say 3 weeks ago. A client of mine has one of those like water temp things where you drop it down and every 5 feet gives you the water temp. And that day, he had given me the update. I was guiding, he was out, and I got off the water at the same time he did, and we were shooting the shit. Well, he was telling me that on the surface it was like 58 degrees, and then down at 65 feet of water was the first time there was like a really big jump. And it went from 56 to 52, from 65 to 70 feet deep. And that was 3 weeks ago. So then in my head, then I was like, I feel like it's done because we did have some insane winds throughout the end of October, early November. Because, like, in my head, and again, I understand turnover to like a pretty good degree, but at that point, I'm like, if there's that little, if there's only a 4 degree water temp difference from the surface all the way down to 65, you would think that pretty much there's nothing left to really make it a huge change. Like, even when temps get to 52 on the surface, like, I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't like. Do you have anything to go off of that? Because I feel like that would tell me that it's pretty much done.
I
Like,
am
there's no way the
on
thermocline went down to 65, right?
Yeah, I don't really know if I fully get that. I've never seen that. I don't
So,
know if I've the explanation is probably above my pay grade for sure.
well, you and me both. Yeah, and we're supposed to
You
we're
know?
supposed to know. So,
Yeah.
like in
We just
my
gotta
head,
find the fish.
yeah, well, exactly. Like, so in my head, basically, when I got that information, which kind of confirmed, um, I guess, like reinforced the idea of why I was finding fish in so many different like depth ranges and locations during that time, and then from then on till now, is just like there's no real change. So I'm not fishing fish that are 65 feet deep anyway. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
from the surface down to your deep edge structure, there's no real big change in the water temp. So it shouldn't really affect me the way that I'm fishing. So in my head, that whole turnover phase kind of I think is kind of out of the picture at this point. I think that really what we're looking for next is more the stability of the temps getting into those low 50s and then just simply the movement and seasonal location changes of like the fall spawning bait fish, ciscos, and everything because most of the good weeds are pretty much gone. There's maybe three good sized weed beds that are left and standing and vertical and green. Um, all the deep sandgrass has pretty much died off. That's like the 22 to 30 foot sandgrass. That's pretty much all gone. So nothing, nothing in the range of, I guess, summertime, like fish holding locations is still around. And it just feels like there's fish still in whatever's left of the old weeds, what's left of the few weed beds that are good. And then there's fish on steep breaks, there's fish on all the way in the back of the flat gradual bays, and then literally open water fish as well. So
Hmm.
it's literally been a daily thing of fishing it all. And
Yep.
patterning wise, none. Just go
Good
do it
luck.
all, cover all your bases. Some days there's going to be little groups of fish that you're gonna just spend more time on throughout that day. But in terms of making sense of what the mass population of fish is doing, I would say not a real easy task at the current moment.
Would
Yeah.
would you find the since you're talking about the high winds and anybody else on the water definitely knows that we've had quite a bit of that lately. Have those played a factor at all? Have you been
I
watching
would say
wind direction or
they've played a huge factor in like bait fish location because we've had like literally insane winds. Like I mean, there's been a few days like a couple weeks ago that it was like blowing south to southwest at like 35 to 45 miles an hour, and if you got 100 yards off of shore, like off the south shore, you were in like converging waves. It looked like there was boat wakes coming at you. And like
Jeez.
you couldn't you basically couldn't work it into the wind. So I would just get like the whole time which we ended up finding a lot of fish that day, but we'd basically get tight to the south shore, work it almost inside out, and you'd be like halfway drifting, halfway holding against the wind, even though you're on the hopefully most protected shore. But the day after that switched over, and the second I could actually make a fishable cast on the North Shore, that's where pretty much every ounce of bait was. So well, I would say the last week it seems like wind directions have changed. Like there hasn't been as many days with this consistency of direction in a row, but the wind-blown stuff, if it's fishable for you and there's more than, one day of wind direction, has been stacking bait on, any of the sharper inside turns or points to the
Hmm.
structures for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just looked back at the sorry, Max, I was gonna say I
Oh,
just
you're
looked
good.
back at my notes and I saw I have the wind directions go south, north, south, southeast, west to north, northwest. Those are the
Hmm.
last few days.
Yep.
And where Max and I were on Sunday, we did not see any fish or any bait where I saw it with my dad and Clayton out there 4 days prior.
Yep.
And in just 4 days, it completely vanished and totally went to a different area. One of the areas was good still, fish in there both times, but one of them was just like desolate, just completely. And this is post turnover. Usually this time of year, you find bait in a spot and it's like the money zone for basically until ice up.
Yep.
You can count on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, no, it's been I jokingly say and I mean it seriously, but like there's so many times I find throughout that like after it gets below 58 degrees, say, you can go drive, let's say hard to soft bottom or some like main lake underwater secondary breaks, and you'll find stretches of like, oh, there's a ton of bait. Oh, there's a muskie or two with that bait ball. And you keep driving another 100 or 200 yards inside imaging. You just spin around to go fish it, and you'll fish through it, and it'll all be gone. Like the whole system is just constantly moving. Everything's in such transition. There's like it's like it almost probably goes back to the last time that we talked about like early season spring stuff and how I basically target a lot of the transition zones and um like your holding spots down steeper breaks where like fish will pull up, they'll either use it to rest or feed off of, and then they'll move on. And any of those like high traffic areas are have been for at least me in the last 3 weeks kind of more consistent. Any of those main lake uh, points, any of the main lake cribs, extensions off of, I guess, the flats and things like that. But there may be fish there, 1 minute and an hour later, there's nothing. So it's a lot of moving going on, and that's kind of why I feel like the two moving targets, me covering as much ground as possible and hoping to run into one active one has kind of been the way to go lately. Because yeah, trying to articulate or trying to really piece things together and make sense of everything and do something real specifically has not been by any means the key.
It kind of goes against like everything you read about or hear about with like late fall fishing, where it's kind of like, you just hang out in an area and wait till they bite. You hear people anchoring next to, a couple cribs because, they know there's a muskie in there. It's just a matter
Uh-huh.
of time or some bait or whatever. And Yeah, I mean everything you're saying is like it's making a lot of sense to me because it's kind of what I've been seeing when I've been able to fish, whether it's been here in the metro or up north. The few times I've gotten up there, which has actually been a good bit this fall, and I mean it just is like this whole transitional time feels like it's just been elongated so drastically this year. Like, the one thing I thought was so weird is the lake we fished on Sunday, like that theoretically should be a great post turnover lake with some like steep breaks, a lot of bait. You should kind of be able to just look at a map on Navionics and be like, these three spots are for sure where bait and muskie should be. And then we get out there, and like Gus said, a few of the spots that he'd fished 4 days prior, the bait was gone, the muskies were gone. And we kind of had to take a long time to figure out where they were. But it's like, we found bait in 15 feet on a steep break, didn't mark any muskies. And then we find bait loaded in like 5 to 7 foot of weeds.
Hmm.
And I'm running I'm throwing a husky deuce, ripping it over the weeds like it's the middle of August, and I'm pulling up electric green cabbage still.
Yep.
And it's like the water temp is, I mean, what was it, Gus? 40,
5,
45?
45, yeah.
And I'm like, what are we doing up here? And then sure as shit, oh, there's a fish. Oh, there's a fish. Start raising some fish, and it's like, what the hell are they doing up here? Like this is not what I have been told. Like it almost feels like, and not to open up Pandora's box just in general,
No,
but
do
like
it, do it.
it like when are we gonna like rewrite the book on the seasonal progression of muskies? Because like this has now been going on for a couple years, I feel like, where this whole fall is so, you hear people talk about it. It's like segmented perfectly. Like you have your late August, early September bite, and then you have your pre-turnover bite. And it's like, oh, when that one's done, then this one starts, and then when that one's done, the next one starts. And it's
Hmm.
like it feels like that you just can just pretty much throw a lot of that out the window. And like these textbook bites, at least for us, have like they've been like mini windows where it's like if you're not there in this 3 day stretch, you're not going to get that, that great shallow water blade and top water bite. Where it's like that should be going on for a long time. And then now it's like this post turnover bite, like drag suckers, deep, slow, big baits. And it's like that hasn't been working. It's the complete opposite. So I'm just like,
No, I
there's no
literally
rule book on this stuff.
I couldn't agree more. Just like I feel like the rule book thing, there's like been like I could count it on one hand in my lifetime of fishing muskies where the rule or like reading the book, and going and seeing the water temps or like a certain time of year, like following the rule book works perfectly. Like it just doesn't ever seem like it happens. It feels like literally half the time you go do the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do and you find fish better or more often or bigger ones than you would do if you go follow the rule book. It's like and like you said, Pandora's box. That is like literally how I've fished. I fished for like the last or the first 5, 6 years of musky fishing ever, and it felt like it taught me and opened my mind up to so many different things because everything I read about it, like as a kid, was all about Canadian Shield muskies. Like that was like what you read,
Yeah.
Joe Booker
hmm
and Hiding and all these guys. And it's like, well, cold fronts in the summer, like that's phenomenal around me. I'm like that's exactly what I want. I don't want a warming trend. They just sit on the bottom and it's like it's the exact opposite of everything that you're told is like what you should go do or where you have like your best bites. So, but yeah, I couldn't agree more with the small window thing this year. It feels like Gus and I think, talked about it a little bit over texting, and you had mentioned it, like the prolonged season changings. But like, it feels like if it's not this year, it was like a month and a half of spawn, just like took forever. And then like this turnover phase. Like 2 days ago, I was screwing around on a lake that's 200 acres next to my house, and on Geneva today, and the water temps are the same. It's like Geneva's 5,000 acres. It's got a 100-foot basin, and this like pond essentially compared to it is the same water temp. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like
Yeah, I mean,
it shouldn't be.
I don't know if we talked about this on one of our last two pods or whatever, but the lake Gus and I fished during the Musky battle, like when we were on it one of the days, like I would have bet a lot of money that it was turning over when we were on it. Like it had all the indications of turnover, like chalky water, just everything was weird. We were finding fish up super, super shallow. We were seeing them deep, but like just the way the water looked, we're like, oh, this water's definitely turning over. And then Gus was texting with a buddy who had been out on that body of water, I think like
The
a good bit.
weekend prior, at
Yeah.
least 7 days prior.
7 or more days prior, it was like, oh no, it was done with turnover then. And
We,
I was like,
we were
wait,
like,
what?
what? Yeah,
Like,
we had mega wins that day, and I thought it was just mixing the last bit of it. I don't know if it was just some shallow. It could have been, the ending of turnover, and because I'm looking back at my notes right now. We had 10 to 35-mile-an-hour winds out of the northwest and
shocker.
51 to 53-degree water temps that day, depending if we're shallower in
Yeah.
the main basin, and yeah, we had like 2 feet of clarity on a very clear system.
Yep.
So we're like, what the hell's going on? And we had bites. We had lost them unfortunately, but um yeah,
I feel like a
that
lot of
was a
times,
bummer.
especially in those lakes up by you guys, where like when you are on the backside of the turnover and you do have those really big wind days, I feel like the last bit of, dying weeds that get blown out, like any turn up of the soft bottom, like sand stuff, just like adds like a tinge to the water that, can make you double think about the whole turnover thing either being done or still going on. Because I mean, I you see that in pieces, I guess, on Geneva. Geneva is just so insanely different from a lot of the lakes
Hmm.
up there. But yeah, I mean, you get some big wind and some of those dying weeds that get, pulled back out and a lot of just stuff getting blown around in the water with the big winds. You definitely got some clarity subtraction. That's a really weird way to say that, huh?
Makes sense though.
Yeah, sure does.
Yeah.
We got
Yeah.
it.
Um, yeah, we get the point. But yeah, I mean, it's the big wins in fall definitely just, especially in that turnover mid, 50-degree range, definitely play with a lot of things, which I love adding some clarity issues to the water for me because I mean, Geneva just is I mean, I've never fished anywhere that it's that clear. I mean, you can literally see the bottom in 35 feet of water.
Mhm.
That's
So I
crazy.
mean, if you don't
Wow.
have if it's sand, you can like it's not. You're like, what am I seeing? And I'm like, yeah, that's the bottom. And you're like, how deep are we? And I'm like, 35. Like you're figure eighting, and you're like, yeah. So if there's not like if you're not fishing over weeds, if you're not fishing, on any like darker bottom kind of change or shade lines or anything, you can literally see everything. It feels like a lot of times fish,
Wow.
well, so many times fish still come out of completely nowhere, which is still amazing to me. But yeah, I mean, it is, I do to some degree understand how people get real intimidated when they go out there because it's like, where do I fish? I see everything. It's like,
Hmm.
you just have to fish. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That
the
would be a trip for
clarity thing,
us.
I'll take a little, I'll take a
It would be
little.
wild.
Yeah, no, it's weird. There's this one time, first fall I ever fished it. I'm looking at the map, I'm still learning it. I go, oh, that looks like it would be a really good spot. There's like a couple little underwater extensions from like 22 to 30, and it's pretty flat, calm, and sunny. And I like driving, I lay off the big motor and I'm on the map. I'm like sneaking up to it. I put the trolling motor in. I go take my first cast. I'm like, I'm like pulling this big white tube and I'm watching the whole cast and I'm like looking, I'm like, I'm in 41 right now. And I see the whole cast. I'm like, all right, I'll take another one. I'm like, no, I am not fishing this right now. This is not the time.
Just drive over rock bars and like look for them down there. It's like the bass guys with the big cone and they stick it in the water and
Dude, they do that all the time. Dude, it's so funny to watch. They do that stuff
Go
all,
Ned
and they
rig
do it
some
in like
muskies.
23 feet of water and stuff. Like you're like, they're like out over deep water and their heads are in there and they're like, I'm like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me.
What what's the term for that? Isn't it like frogging or no? Am I getting that wrong? Do you know the term?
Self-scoping.
Self-scoping.
cheap version, very cheap version of live
Yeah,
scopes.
yeah.
Just get a big traffic cone out there and start looking
Mhm.
through it.
I just stand on like an 8-foot ladder in the middle of my boat and cast for Muskies. That's the way I do
Like in the saltwater flats, Florida Keys type
it.
stuff.
Actually, that might be the next boat. Now that I think about it, I'll just.
Yeah,
I mean, who needs a figure eight when you can see everything?
right, right. Yeah, you could probably tell them they have. If you had like a 5, 6 foot ladder that you could stand on top of, you'd be able to tell your clients they'd have a fish coming from a mile away, I feel
Dude,
like.
half the time you literally. But we had one like during the pre-turnover phase when temps were like 63. It was hilarious because on Geneva they have like they have like 1,300 docks, giant wooden docks, and they put them in and take them out every year. So like these giant flat bottom boats are taking all these docks out still, and there's still a zillion in, but they're taking this dock out like right in front of this really perfect inside weed edge sand spot, and I'm like, well, screw it, we'll just fish it anyway. I'm not like expecting a fish to be right next to where all this shit's happening. And this guy's bait lands like next to the back of this giant rig, and I'm like, oh, you got one coming. Like the second, our boat's in like 32, but the bait lands in like three, and the thing just chases. I mean, it chases it in, zigzagging, misses it, he eats it. He sets the hook. The bucktail jumps like 7 feet, and I was already spinning around to grab the net. Supposedly, well, I heard him go, "Oh no!" So I like looked back up, and I watched the fish just inhale the bait again. So it ate it while it was spinning, like halfway in. He set the hook. It came out of its mouth and like flew like 7 feet, and it knocked so much. He had so much slack line that the blades weren't even spinning. The bait was just dropping, and that was when I looked back to watch it eat it. He was like, there, dude, it was like a 43-inch like leecher, and I was just like, God, I love having leechers in my freaking fishery. Like, like they just freaking put themselves by the loudest, noisiest, like dock assisting boat, thing, and then it
That's
cows a
unbelievable.
bucktail like twice.
Flying in.
Dude, the whole freaking bait was gone. I was just like, and it was like a freaking super thick, gorgeous fish. Looks like it's never been touched. And it was flat, calm, and sunny. And I was just
Of
like, dude, this is
course.
hilarious.
Of course.
Yeah, I
Yeah, it's
mean,
just what
Shoot
you read
that.
about.
yeah, flat, calm, and sunny. Like literally the most
Yeah.
perfect conditions for a 30 to 35 foot clarity lake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
Before we
typically
get
like
too,
the dead stick bucktails too. That's how
oh
I
Mhm.
yeah.
catch my fish. It's
Dude,
typically, I don't like the blades to spin. I just,
I'm telling you, there's a weird thing out there about letting a bucktail sink and having a fish eat it. Like I don't really get it. I'm telling you. I,
Wow. So,
so
that's incredible.
well, I'll ask you a question here in a second, but before we get too far ahead, I looked it up. It's flogging, not frogging. The cone.
what is it?
Logging?
F
When
L O
you get
G
like
G E R. Flogger. Flogging.
Ooh, logging. Okay.
It's
Might have to
logging,
give that a go.
yeah, it's a really weird
logging
word. But
is definitely, there's a definition for that out of the fishing world.
exactly, I know it is a very weird word, and if you watch the videos, it's a little sus. Dudes standing over each other while one dude is laying on the bow and dude's leaning over
Doesn't
with
seem like the
a,
most practical thing, but
hey, do what you got to do to catch some fish, I guess.
I mean, if in a bass boat, sure, but like if you're doing it out of the front of my boat, you'd be like really hanging over the water trying to get your head in that thing.
So, Austin, or when you talked about the dead sticking a bucktail, I got a question for you. And I know that you've, fished all over and use rubber baits a lot and count them down to fish sandgrass, this and that. Have you ever gotten a hit counting down a bucktail over deep water? Has one
Yeah,
hit it while
yeah,
you're, yeah?
that's like kind of what I was joking about. Like if you
Okay.
get a backlash sometimes and your bucktail's just sinking, like they'll just eat it. Or like if you just like cast and you're like doing something else and not starting to retrieve.
Uh,
I don't I don't know what it is, but I will say to add that like something that might be of actual value. Um, um, like Lake Geneva itself, I mean, a- anybody that I've talked to or guided or really fished the place knows that bucktails work pretty dang good. But the lake itself feels like it was like designed for grenades. So
Yeah.
like the back half of September all the way until today and will be until the rest of fall. Like the ability to take a grenade, throw it out there, and like you're saying, if you're fishing deep sand grass, you're fishing a deep point extension, you're fishing a super steep break, you just want to fish a blade in 10, 15 feet of water, like deep. It's that bait itself is just absolutely phenomenal for anybody that just continues to not using it, like to not use it, because I know it can be a pain casting it and the way it folds over, and a lot of
I
people
was just
don't
gonna
like
ask if
fishing it.
do you have any tips or tricks in that regard? Because that did happen. I was fishing with somebody and they mentioned that they didn't like grenades on because they kept folding them over, and I was
Mhm.
trying to explain how kind of Gus was showing me to the point where now kind of comes second nature. I was not doing a very good job at explaining how to do it, but do you have any kind of tips and tricks on how to not have
It,
them
is-
do that?
that is funny, but I will say this is like kind of how I cast every bait. And actually, Thorn Bros literally just came out with a YouTube video like a week ago.
Oh,
And
funny.
it sounds hilarious, but they were talking about casting giant rubber. Ben, um, oh, what the hell's his last name? Ben, you know him.
Olson?
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, Ben
Hmm.
Olson did like the whole rundown of how you cast a giant rubber bait and like the way it's the easiest on your body. But guys, I think just cast with too little amount of line out. One thing with the grenade for sure, you definitely want like at least a 12-inch wire leader. It's just gonna make it a million times better. But I just
Hmm.
I cast with so much line out and just let the bait swing next to me, get behind me, and it's like just a giant long lined lob cast, and it I never bet like I never have a dog ball. I never bunch up a grenade. Um, but I will say the counting down of the grenade thing, if you throw your bait out there and engage your line, rather than like having a just a huge slack line to let it sink, a lot of times I'll just engage it, almost like pull the bait towards me so the head is face towards the boat and the blades are behind, and then just tight line count it down where it's like it's not dropping straight vertical necessarily, but you kind of
Hmm.
eliminate the helicopter like loose bunch of slack line where it grabs the leader or grabs your line on the way down. That
Hmm.
seems like it works a million times better. But yeah, I
Hmm.
if you cast with like 4 feet, 5 feet of line out and just swing the bait next to you from in front of you all the way behind you and straight over your head, 95% of the time you don't have to worry about. And I do that with every single bait. I never have a short little line while I'm casting because it's just a million times harder on your body and wrists and whatever. We got giant, long, beautiful, expensive rods that can go ahead and chuck those baits a mile.
Yeah.
Let them.
I I think it's good advice on any sinking bait, keeping that tight line as the bait falls. I mean, I learned my lesson a very hard way in regards to that. So
Yeah,
it's
I have a video from the first year the grenade came out actually, and it was June and I was yo-yoing it back to the boat basically in open water around a bunch of bait fish, and I'd always let it sink like a 7, 8, 9, 10 count, and I throw it out there and I would just have like a snake of loose line on the surface, and I got my big pole mount videoing, and all of a sudden, like a few seconds in, you just watch all the line just jump like 7 feet, and I just like just the most ridiculous Kevin Van Dam attempt to like get a hook set in, and it was on for a half a second and off, and I was just like, you got to be kidding me. And from then on, you got to have connection to that bait while that thing's sinking,
yeah.
because
Yeah, it
that's
just takes one time where that happens to you to realize like, oh, I should probably be paying attention as my bait's sinking down. I mean, I had one where I put the rod in between my legs and started drinking from a Gatorade.
oh yep, yeah. Yeah,
So
that's usually me putting a dip in. I'll throw it out and I'll be like, oh, I could use a dip, and it's sinking, and all of a sudden, yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's
It's
good,
too
it
good.
gives you an idea, maybe the day's pattern. I gotta let it sink a little more or have a longer pause.
Right.
But most
I
of the time, it just screws you for your one bite you get.
exactly. That, yeah, in my case scenario that day, that was exactly the case. I'm like, really, we just fished for 7 hours, and the one bite I got today was when I was taking a sip of Gatorade.
Hmm.
Like that's it. That sounds about right.
So, Gus, I do have a question for you, which
Mm-hmm.
it's more just a topic I think we should talk about, but I'm wondering if you've seen the same. Would you say that like I'm gonna say this year overall, but in terms of the back half of the season, have you seen where like instead of a bunch of fish being on the spots that you would expect them to be, there's more just like one half of the amount of spots with twice as many fish on them? Like groups of fish in small
Mm-hmm.
spots as opposed to like fish on a bunch of the spots that you figure.
I think 100%. I know exactly what you're talking about, and that has been the case since I I don't know if I can put my finger on a time frame when that happens. I truly think they do bunch up a little bit in the summer, but they're still super spread out. Like if you're on a system with awesome weeds and a lot of bait, like there's going to be so many spots with fish.
Mhm.
And every once in a while, I'll stumble in. If you get lucky and you're in a good spot at a good time, you can get a couple. And usually, I would say more times than not, you get the fish from the same area. I don't know if I can say that about July, possibly August, but September, it's like you catch a couple, like it's going to be on that drift probably within that hour too, I would say. Um, and then now in October, I mean, or sorry, now in November, that's 100% the case. I mean, there is so much dead water out there.
Yes.
And Max, you can attest to that. We tried to set up a mega drift where we went in one direction for a long time in areas where we've known to see fish, and plenty of those known areas, there was just no bait and no fish. And then it was like clockwork, find the bait, find the fish. It's super cliche to say that, but that's like 100% an absolute fact. I was fishing some skinnier water the Saturday, I believe. It was my last guide trip. I might take a one person out later in the year, but that trip we were seeing nothing, and where I was seeing a lot of fish the week prior, like a lot of fish, like packs of like two to four in these certain little areas. And we went the first hour and a half without marking a single ounce of bait or a muskie through all of the spots where we've been seeing them. And I was about ready to pull the plug. And then we get whacked on a 10-inch jake up shallow, got the fish in the bag, got some pics, and sent her back. I'm like, well, okay, that's cool. That was off moon. We haven't seen jack shit, and that thing just came out of nowhere. And then as soon as we put that thing back, there's just in the spots where there should be, there's just bait, 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 musky, musky, bait, bait, musky. And it was all really concentrated more than I've ever seen it. And that's where we got another bite a little further down that stretch. Um, but yeah, it's very much Max, you were there. I think you were there that one day we had three on side image at once. Um, I
Even
mean,
just
we're
on
going like a
Sunday, it was just when we found one, we found three.
Yep.
And
yep.
we've
Oh,
had multiple days of multiple fish looking at the same sucker.
yeah, I was just about to say more than so this is the third fall, I believe, that we've had a live scope unit, a singular unit. And when watching suckers, like when we have it on, some days we don't really have it on, but I think prior to this year, I've seen it once, maybe twice, where two muskies were following a sucker at a
Hmm.
time. And I think one time even last year we had three, like two on one and one on another. And I thought that was wild. And then this year, October alone, and then another day in November, I think it's upwards of 10 or 11 times I've seen multiple muskies following one sucker. And I thought that was just
I
crazy
feel like that
to
right
see
there
that
kind of
many
tells you.
times. Yeah.
Like live scope's obviously an insanely quality tool to give you a pretty good insight of what the hell's going on underwater. But in
Hmm.
terms of your time using it, since you've had it this year in comparison to prior years, having that many fish in such close proximity, that's kind of cool. So, I mean, I'm happy to hear that. I because that's exactly what I've
Hmm.
experienced. Like I would say that I've gone through cycles in my musky fishing life of like wanting to continue to fish the next spot and not fishing the same spot again and again, or like
Hmm.
like at one point, you'd feel like you'd find a spot with fish and you would just continue to only want to fish that spot. And then I'm like, no, let's not go back on those fish. We'll just keep going. And this year, it's been like, if you want to have a multiple fish day, at least for in my boat and the experience around my house down here, it's like you find one fish, there's going to be 3 to 7 more, like within three
Hmm.
cast lengths. And if you want to catch multiple fish that day, you gotta catch one, release it, spin back around, start 50 yards before it, and then continue to run that little spot because it just seems like
Yeah.
they've been packed up. And I mean, in terms of the muskie book and the fall thing, I feel like the decreasing available structure, like losing your weeds, your sandgrass, what's left of good weeds, obviously you're gonna pack fish into it. And there's so much less quality structure in the lake or, you know, places for them to use that if it would make sense for fish to pack up in smaller areas because there's only X
Hmm.
amount left of good spots. But yeah, I mean, from the back half or from early fall on, it's been like really apparent. You find one and it's kind of like, okay, we're gonna run either that spot a different angle, we're gonna hit that again come moon, we're gonna whatever, and it's like multiple times this. I'd say 2 weeks ago, there's one stretch of weeds that was like pretty much within football fields left that was good weeds, and it's still kind of left. It just doesn't look great anymore. And it would be like guy in front of me would have a follow, it would turn off, and like I'm like halfway through my cast, I'd be like, oh, here comes one. And like they were just so packed. So I think that's probably not a bad, I guess, suggestion for those that are left fishing on the water. But like you find one fish, you find a spot that seems to be holding them. It's definitely in your best interest to at least time it back out when you think they should be active and hit it again, or just go ahead and run it literally again the second you're quote
Multiple
unquote done with
times.
the spot. Yeah, because I mean
Yep.
there's tons of fish in close proximity, it seems like.
This is a question for both you guys. You mentioned those who are still fishing. What have you guys been seeing on the water as far as pressure lately down in Geneva and Gus up in northern Wisconsin? You've kind of been bouncing around late in the year now that hunting, season has kind of started to kick off a little bit.
I mean, pressure on Geneva is like almost never there, to be honest with you. Like if I see on weekends, if I see like one or two other musky guys throughout the year, like that's kind of normal. There'll be
Hmm.
random waves of them around the fall tournament that we had out there in like the third week of October.
How did
But
that go?
it went. I think there was 5 fish caught out of like 67 boats.
Okay.
Um,
1 day tourney or 2 day?
just one. It's really like Brian Scaife, he does a video on it usually every year. He fishes with I think the tournament director. It's mostly just to fund some extra stocking dollars. It's a fun little tournament through Fish Monkey or whatever the hell the thing's called.
Okay.
But
Oh yeah, yeah.
actually funny story from that one. Um I had a so we're it like the weeds are pretty much gone in this one area we were fishing mostly, but there's just like the rubble of sandgrass left. I this feels like a long turnaround. So Gus, remember to talk about your pressure thing.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
Um,
Got it.
but it's like I don't know, maybe an hour and
Great co-hosting right here. This
yeah,
is
yeah,
great.
see, yeah,
Fantastic. A
yep.
plus
You
work.
gotta try to bring a full picture every time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Brian, shout
Yeah.
out.
Suck it, Brian.
Shout out.
Suck it.
Um, but so I'm just throwing a blade, 10 feet of water, clear as can be. The sun's like still kind of at a low angle, and my bait lands, and I get like eaten. Set the hook, nothing. Get eaten again. set the hook, nothing. So in my head, I'm like, yeah, pike or bass, bring my
Hmm.
bait in, nothing. I'm like, Dom, my buddy, tournament partner for the day. I'm like, just chuck in right where I was. So he throws in, comes into the figure eight, and he's wearing a GoPro, and like a 48, 49 just comes out of nowhere,
Oof.
and like kind of comes up on his bucktail, and I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. That was the fish that just touched my bait like that. I'm like, it literally felt exactly like a bass, like just trying to
Oh,
eat it twice.
what the
Love it.
hell?
Yeah, so that would have been big fish for the tournament. So that one kind of was sad, but um other than that, yeah, like pressure, like I see like today we saw two boats on the water. One was bass guys. They weren't flogging, but they were they were they were
A little too windy
scoping
to flog.
bass. Yeah, it was definitely way too windy to flog. They would have been tubing, I think. Um, and then there was like another guy in like a big recreational type of boat that had a trolling motor on the front that was attempting to fish with his dog. But like,
Nice.
yeah, you don't nowadays you don't see anybody other than the dock people and like one or two boats. It's amazing. It feels like an entirely different lake compared
Mhm.
to the whole summer.
Oh yeah, I bet it's got to
It's
be a madhouse out
it
there during
actually
summer.
feels oh, it's stupid. I mean, it's like Tonka, but just it's in a big circle lake.
Yeah, nowhere to hide really.
No, nowhere to hide. Nowhere to hide. And
Yeah,
if you go like towards the middle, which like there's some like structure way offshore, instead of just being next to the boats, you're just in the collection of waves
right.
from everybody driving around the outside. So
Yeah.
like it can be flat calm and you're in 4 or 5 footers from like these giant boats.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
Jesus.
I
Yeah.
got a taste of that at fishing Tonka this summer, and I was not a fan. I mean, I've talked on this thing. I do really have gotten grown to like that lake a little bit, but it's just more of a
Mhm.
pick your spots thing for me. I mean, yeah, it's gonna be a nightmare if you're out there on an 80-degree day on, on a Saturday.
Yeah, no, it's
But
I think it's better for the fishing, to be honest with you. Like literally in
hmm,
June in the summer, like if you get out there at sunrise, I swear I don't see a fish until 10 a.m. when all the boats come out. And I don't really, I mean, there are windows, don't get me
Really?
wrong, but like,
yeah.
dude, the commitment
Hmm.
level of anglers on Geneva in the summer to get out before the sun rises is insane. Yet when I do it, I don't see a fish until all the boats come out and then they leave. So like the whole launch will be full if I try to get there like at an hour after sunrise. Like sometimes you literally can't get a spot, you got to go to another launch. So instead I just start going at 10 in the morning and then like half the launch is already like cleared back out
Empty,
with the
yeah.
morning wave.
There's
Yeah.
probably to be something to be said about that with like, how clear the water is. You're saying just adding a little bit more commotion to the water probably mixes them up a little bit. And
Helps.
Dude,
Yeah.
and with how like I've seen it on like smaller pressured systems and just smaller systems in general where like they're so in tune with their environment and especially if it's clear, like
Mhm,
it just doesn't feel like there's any excitement going on in the water.
right.
Like nothing to really get them to pick their head up or like, think about much. But
Hmm.
the second you get a bunch of boats driving around and it just feels like there's life and the
Yeah.
fish, like there's been so many guide occasions where things look like they line up perfect for a moon right before sunrise and like we'll get out at 4:30 and I'm like I just want to forewarn you I don't know if this is going to happen but if come 8:39 and we've already fished through sunrise moon all this what feels like prime conditions comes and we have yet to see a fish just wait until 10.
Just stick with me.
Yeah, like don't lose hope. But like we may crush them, right away in the morning. But if it doesn't happen, just have some faith that the second you're starting to like think about trying to stay in the boat from the waves, then the muskies will come play.
Wow.
And
Right.
like sure as shit,
That's
I don't
wild.
know if I can fully say that about up here. I mean,
Yeah, I
I'd
agree.
say
I agree.
overall, like some of the really early mornings that I was fishing the Eagle River chain, I was specifically going for that sunrise bite, and it was very good this summer in August because I know you talked about having a lot of flat, calm days. There were I mean,
Hmm.
Max can attest to this of how many times I texted him. I'm like, It's 1 p.m. and I there's been approximately 1 to 2 miles an hour of wind all freaking day.
Oh
And our
yeah.
only bite this
Uh,
morning was at like 5:43 a.m. on top water.
yeah.
And then the next bite's not going to be until it goes from 1 to 4 mile an hour at like 2:30 p.m. And
Mhm.
it was just, oh, it was awful, but the fish were still biting and I had to get up early a lot because
Yeah,
I
that
figured,
happens on the fox chain, I would say. The
yeah.
fox chain, like midsummer, early bite is super consistent. Again, I
Hmm.
really didn't spend I just don't spend time out there in midsummer to fall anymore. I don't need to, basically. In Geneva, I just like the quality and quantity and style of fishing a lot more than not seeing your bait and dealing with. They killed off all the weeds too. Which, Gus, when you were down here fishing with me, did we have like good weeds at all? I don't remember what. It was really
We,
early in the year. I don't
it
remember.
was, it was May. I want to say it came down around like the 10th, somewhere between the 10th and the 15th. And we
Oh yeah,
fished
okay.
some weeds. They were green. Um, there was mostly we were mostly fishing the shad in the open water,
Yeah.
so I couldn't remember. But there was definitely a shit ton of weeds in the spots we did fish in the weeds.
Yeah, they killed every single weed in the whole chain.
That's
Like
terrible.
midsummer. Yeah, they did some spray. And I was joking before the presidency. I was like, whoever they put in charge of killing the weeds, they need to have run for president because like they did a hell of a job. Like
They got it
like
done.
yeah, like the one day I went like I had heard about it and I just figured like I'll find like some weeds left because it was like one of the best weed growth years I'd seen since like 2015. It was just a phenomenal weed bite. And I went out there and I was just like, there's like four stalks of weeds, and then just like what's dead where they probably sprayed, but it just hasn't gotten completely washed away. And there was it
Oh
was just like
God.
3 inch clarity, and I was just like,
It's
this is really
terrible.
fun. I like this a lot.
Jesus.
Turned into just a mud bowl
Just reeling
of
straight into
sand
your
and mud.
leader, and you're like,
Oh,
okay, I think I'm good. Yeah.
and then go to Geneva and it's 35 feet
Yeah,
clarity.
there's not a lot of in-betweens around me. You know, you have
Doesn't sound like it.
no, it's actually quite it can be quite frustrating because you literally have the exact opposites of fisheries, essentially.
You
And
don't
Yeah.
have the moderate 4 to 5 foot clarity or
or
something
like size ranges, like
between
it's
the,
like the chain has like they're nice size lakes, you know, they're manageable. And then like
yeah.
then Geneva like Geneva's plenty. I love the size of Geneva. It's just an oval, so it's like not like exciting.
Yep.
So like you have 30-foot clarity or 1 foot clarity, shallow stained and it's just like okay, like
It's got to help out your diversity as an angler, though, to like be putting yourself on all these different bodies of water and having to kind of, become proficient fishing all that different type of stuff.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I always give credit to the chain for teaching me to think outside of the box and fish ways that other people aren't and things along those lines because if you can, I mean, there's tons of muskies in the chain, but and anybody can pretty much go and fish shallower water, quote unquote, and
Sure.
contact and find muskies, but to like consistently catch sizable fish out there, you kind of got to think outside of the box and then understanding how to go about fishing 30 to 35-foot clarity fish with 100-foot basins and deep sandgrass and
Yeah.
giant wake boats is also exactly the opposite. And yeah, you definitely learn a lot about the fish, that's for sure.
Yeah. There's no doubt. All right, Gus, how's the pressure been up north?
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Circle back on that. Um,
just like nothing. That's
Yeah. Quick
right,
20-minute
right.
just
break.
quick answer.
And I would say it's been definitely a lot less because a ton of people are in the woods now. I would say on the weekend, if you're on like a either some sort of system that's typically busy in the summer or it's a bigger lake where, a lot of people kind of want to target that trophy in the fall, I'll see like 1 to 3 boats on the weekend. During the
Mhm.
week. when I've been out, it's anywhere between 0 and 1, you know, really on any system that I've been to. And
Sure.
still every once in a while I'll run into somebody that's walleye fishing, but typically if you do see a boat out there, they're musky fishing for sure. Um, Seeing a decent bit of people trolling. Most of the time people are just sucker drifting. Um, I don't even see that many people casting, to be honest. It's either they're trolling or they're just plopped on their ass with suckers. And
Are you
nothing wrong with that because I do that a decent bit too. I cast, and then if I'm, getting a little tired, you know that you got your two suckers or however many you got down there, looking to get chowed only if they have good names. So
yeah,
That's yeah.
well.
You always gotta name them. Well, I don't think I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say.
Austin, are you running suckers at Geneva?
No. I would love to say that it's that I will, so
hmm
I've tried it. Um, and I jokingly, again, it's one of those things where on such a big system, and it seems like the falls that I've fished it, which has only been the last handful of years, it takes so long for the temps to get down to where I would say I want to use suckers, like the upper 40s and lower. Because I've yet to have an issue with catching them casting and having action casting, and to even add to that, which people can take it and use it if they would like, but like literally from until December, I throw bucktails every day. Like somebody in the boat's throwing a bucktail last year. Started December. Last fish I caught was on a bucktail in the figure eight. Um, so I mean, the one day that I used a sucker out there, my trailer had like fallen apart the couple two falls ago. And by the way, I've only ever heard of one muskie caught on a sucker out there ever,
Wow.
and it was like a 46 incher like 6 years ago.
Huh.
So
wow.
I'm sure that other people have, but there is like somewhat of a connection, I would say, with like heavy Cisco fisheries and people
Yeah.
struggling with suckers. I've
Yep.
heard that like
Y-
many a
Yep.
times. But one day that we did use one, we started like just after sunrise in November, and by like damn near noon, I had realized we were on our third spot, and I was just like, no. I can't cover water. Like we're like barely moving. And like again, the later fall, most of the time you want to slow your boat down, you want to slow your baits down, you want to keep them in the zone, things like that. That's why a sucker's so productive most times. It's always down in their zone. Obviously, it's real. But
Hmm.
like with how clear the water is, these fish are just still such I, I I think Steve Herbeck said it the best, and he said it to me, and it stuck so perfectly. But they're cheetahs, so they chase their food down. They like they're not pumas where they sit in like perfectly ambush positions. Like they're designed and wired to like chase their food with speed, as opposed to like two tail kicks and eat a bait. So I
Hmm.
think one, that is the big reason why blades work so efficiently out there year round. It's because they're just designed to chase. And the best bait to catch a fish next to the boat is always a bucktail. And two, that day that we dragged those suckers, we had a pike grab the one. We had two suckers. We had the pike grab the one that I tried shaking off and it got hooked, and then the sucker came off, and I was like, dude, that pisses me off. And then the second one, we're like halfway
Sucks.
through a spot. My buddy catches one on a bucktail. Uh, we release it. We're like a little bit further, and I mark a fish, what looked to be like a sizable muskie on side imaging on the other side, and sucker goes off. We go to set the hook, comes like no weight, comes up, and then like a pike eats it. And I was just like, okay. So I just haven't even, it was probably just a big pike because Geneva's got giant pike too. And I'm just like, okay, well, we saw nine muskies, caught one, all on our baits, and then we had two pike eater sucker that was $14, and we only fished five spots today instead of 15.
Slowing you down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
This is gonna
I'm
get
gonna probably
expensive.
screw around with it again this fall when the water temps are, in the 40s and it's like a high of 33. But
Okay.
I think I've never seen it to be
Ye-
or heard it to be because you see guys out there all the time with them, but I've never heard much success. I think they
right.
look at them, but
Yeah.
I
I,
love
I
doing
I
that.
could I got a couple things on that. One is I for sure agree about the like, a Cisco based water or a lake that has Cisco as a primary somewhat forage.
mhm.
Um we've used suckers there and we do not have a lot of success. And when we have, I've kind of talked to Max about this, and I don't know how much I've talked about it on the podcast here, but maybe I did last year, possibly. But when we've had suckers eaten out there on those deep clear Cisco based lakes, it's typically if we're running a weed edge.
Yeah,
If
it's
we're on
like the soft
rocks, if we're on
structure.
rocks, right, if we're on rocks or we're off structure or deeper or something like that, uh, those fish, I think those fish are like looking for the Cisco's to stage and spawn that night or, come up shallow. Whereas in the weeds, those fish are eating
Like
probably
opportunistic with
suckers
the
and probably, other fish that are, chilling in the weeds, and they're kind of gonna be more like, I guess, a puma in this case, where they're just sitting in the weeds waiting to ambush a sucker going slowly by, where those fish off the steep breaks and the rocks and open water going after the Cisco's, they are the cheetahs. They're the ones that are chasing the food down. Those
Yep,
are the ones you want to be casting, trolling,
yep.
jigging, something vertical going up and down a lot more than just a slow sucker. And
It seems
two,
so weird though to try to like make sense of it.
yeah,
It's like if they're
it's
looking
weird.
for like if they're that like there shouldn't really be a reason, right? Like if you went and put a giant sucker through like all these Cisco staging on a rock bar, you would never in your right mind think that that's why it wouldn't get eaten. They're like, that one's like, usually they'd be like, you'd think like
It's
your
food.
bait in comparison to the Cisco's, your bait's different, so they can dial in on it. That's what they're gonna
Hmm.
eat. And then like, it just seems weird to me. But like, I've heard guys talk about it on Lake Vermilion when I was working there in 2017. They were telling me stories of like, they've given it tons of goes sucker fishing it, and the only place that they can ever get them to bite it is like in the narrows of between the west and heading east, which is all like kind of your trashy structure, like different weeds and like shallower
Yeah,
and stuff like that. But go
interesting.
bring it on the main lake areas and it doesn't get eaten. It's like,
Yeah.
really weird
Right.
to me.
It's like that's not what
Yeah.
they're looking for. Because I mean, I don't
It's
know.
still a free meal though. It's
Yeah,
like,
that's what I'm
Right.
saying. Like, how do they? I want them to send me an email update on
yeah.
why they're not going to eat the sucker because it's still a free.
Yeah.
So they're
It's like they're
truly chasing
expecting a
after
steak
what
at
they want
dinner.
to
Not
chase.
getting it.
I mean,
Might
it's
Right.
just
be
like
smarter than we think, but I think they're still dumb. I
I
can't tell.
this. So I mean, I'm not an expert down there at all, but I think this is a good example of muskies chasing after like a specific bait fish at a specific time of year. Green Bay, super shad wraps. I mean, everybody knows about that bite. September rolls around. You're gonna go trolling. What did to catch a 50 pounder out there? 5-inch bait. That's gonna get it done. Throw a 10-inch bait out there. I've talked to those guys. They say maybe you get lucky, but you know, almost every single time they're gonna eat that little super shad wrap.
I,
And
I think it's
I
funny
don't
too,
know.
because even on the Fox chain, right? Like I've fished out there with suckers, and I won't say in the last few years, but like when I first really started in the late 20 teens, like I'd get every fall we'd go out there with suckers, and I've never once caught one on the Fox chain and suckers, and I know people do, but way like back in the day, supposedly that was like a phenomenal bite out there in the fall, dragon suckers.
Hmm.
Hmm.
But in regards to bait fish, like focused like food groups. They introduced shad in the fox chain, I want to say in 2007. It may be 2001, but I can't remember exactly. But I think that again, with the introduction of shad, they follow shad the whole year. I mean, your mass populations of especially big fish, but the muskies in general are targeting these shad. So in terms of them being so keyed in on one food source, especially during, like you said, specific times of year, you look at that
Hmm.
and go, why wouldn't they eat suckers? Well, now since they introduced shad, they don't need to eat a sucker to be the most, fatty, high protein food source. They got shad.
Hmm.
So
So are we
it's
starting to
kind of an
give
interesting thought.
we're starting to give these muskies a little credit here, or are they
I think
smartening
that
up on us, or what's going on here?
I think that we're all idiots for even fishing for them.
That's how I certainly feel right
We
now.
we could definitely go down that.
That's a
Like,
rabbit hole we'll wait
God
to have
damn.
Brian on for.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh my
Brian would,
God.
yeah,
Yeah, he'd love that
yeah.
one. Is he the one that really likes bright colors?
Bright colors, shallow water, grew up bass fishing. That's our
Just
guy.
in his bones.
He'd
Got to see
love
the
Geneva.
docks.
He'd
Got to
love
see the
Geneva.
shore.
Throw a bright bucktail, catch a bass.
He's just trying to feel something.
Yeah, he's that's how he's seen one of the biggest fish that he's ever raised is tossing on a Meps on a spin rod just because we were catching a bunch of pike and he just wanted to fight a pike longer than 5 seconds. He wanted to fight it for 12 seconds on a spin rod instead.
Hey,
Yeah.
some of the best bites I've accidentally found was because I just got sick of muskies and wanted to catch a pike. Like the Madison chain years ago. We were in my
Hmm.
little 14 footer and we just wanted to get out of the wind and catch a pike. So we went under the bridge by on Monona in that little triangle, which everybody knows about now. And we just
Yeah.
drifted through there and we were literally trying to catch pike. And on the first drift, I had like a 45-incher eat my bucktail twice in the figure eight and come off. We moved like four others and I caught one. And I was like, we went in here to catch a pike. We figured this was like where the pike would be. And then
Right.
all of a sudden it was like the sickest bite ever.
Loaded. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking
Jesus.
of like certain bites and kind of going in and out of style or whatever you want to call it, but you mentioned like the Fox chain used to be a good sucker lake. And I know you don't, obviously you're not running suckers at Geneva, but you've spent plenty of time in the North Woods of Wisconsin. It's like I'm getting worried that these fish are getting smart to the sucker game. Like I've been hearing it from a lot of people. You see it on social media, you talk to people, and it's like it's just not that good.
It's
And
not,
I'm getting really worried
yeah.
that like next year is like, well, it's just a weird year, warm fall, and like we're gonna be here in a year from now talking on the podcast to you. We're gonna be saying, dude, we haven't even had one eat a sucker this year because it's like it's just feels like it's getting very, very difficult. And I know it still obviously has its days and like it works. I mean, Gus caught a dandy on a sucker on Saturday. Of course, I wasn't in the boat. I was, on a
Well,
hike with my
that's the
girlfriend.
pattern.
But like, yeah, the pattern is just to not have me in the
Yeah.
boat. And even when I do get bites, I just give them a free meal anyways. So, man, I've been really negative tonight.
But
I'm a little worried that like the sucker bite's not just, it's having
I
a hard
think
time.
here's a way for me to flip it positive for you. Because I don't disagree. I feel like I've seen a lot less of like the crazy successful, sucker things coming from up there like every year. And I haven't sucker fished up there in probably a couple of years. Um in fall, but I feel like ways the coming years, I think the spring sucker bite, the people that actually go use them in the early season, I think that's gonna be a way to
Hmm.
like I wouldn't say like I don't know, not combat the fall bite because you can't really do anything about the fall if you're only going to use them in the spring. But I think that using them in the spring is like a very underutilized
If you want to get your
and
fix,
you
you're
should,
saying,
yeah, like I think you should. I think everybody should be using them in the spring because I think, and I've heard it from the guys that I know that use them in the spring, but like it's arguably better. And then two,
mhm,
the last few years that I have done it up north, seems like the bite sucker fishing wise has come of one of two ways. One, just doing it after dark. Like the after dark sucker bite, just sticking it out for the first 2, 3 hours after dark. I mean, it'll only be 7:30 p.m. by the time you're done.
right,
That's kind of the nice thing. We've caught so many more of our sucker fish, and I really don't sucker fish much anymore, but like the last handful of years that I did, the after dark sucker bite was like the key. And then
Hmm.
also that
Interesting.
when Livingston came out with those sound bullet things, the like inline things you can put on, like you can either build a bucktail out of it. We used to just cut apart their little MEPS sound maker things and split ring them onto stuff.
Hmm.
Most of the sucker fish I've caught in recent years have all had that like inline Livingston sound bullet thing, and I don't like I'll have it might not make a difference, but I can tell you every single one of the sucker fish that I had used with if I had two suckers out there, one having it, one not, every single one of them came on the sound bullet.
Interesting.
I'm willing to
Would
try
you
anything.
would you yeah, right. On top of that, ask you two more questions on the suckers. Would you say getting more bites going faster or slower? Where slower is more of that like point 0.3 to point 0.5 and faster is more of that like point 0.6 to almost a mile an hour with suckers. Like what would you choose?
After dark, I would go slow for sure, but
Hmm.
during the daytime, this one little lake we used to fish all the time in fall. It was back still when I was going to college. There was one time we just had this because like you can go into those lakes up north by you guys and like they're just little pothole lakes, so you just drag them around the outside. Well, we
Hmm.
didn't want to
Hmm.
take the suckers in and out, so we just put the trolling motor on high and went across the dead middle to get to the other spot we want to go to. We were going like 2.5 and freaking like right in the middle of the lake, and I was just like, that is hilarious. So I mean, I guess like high speed trolling them is
High speed trolling a sucker. You gotta have enough weight though, I'd assume, because
Just what you read about.
dude, yeah, I don't know.
right.
My buddy was like, "Is there like a crib or something?" I'm like, "Dude, we're in 26." Like, and then the other
There's
funny part
nothing.
about that was one time we reeled them all the way up where they're like on the surface in the rod holder, and we went and like parked at the dock because I had to grab something from the truck. And as we're big motoring out with these suckers on the surface in the rod holders, like drag locked, like the thing clicked in,
Hmm.
one fish just came up and chowed it out of the weed bed off the, and dude, like, and the rod's
What?
bent over, like, and like we couldn't get the rod out of the holder or press the bail,
Yeah.
and like it was almost literally like big motor trolling, like a big motor trolling bite, but it was, and we caught it too. It was hilarious.
That's
How do
sick.
you pattern
Yeah,
that one?
yeah.
That's sick.
Well, that's like back to or the PMTT on Pewaukee when I was straight retrieving a dying dog trying to, tighten my spool up and I get chowed and I'm like, well, what am I supposed to reel this dying dog in like at high speed now? Is that the pattern for
What
today
am I
or
supposed to
That's
do with that information?
anytime a dog ball happens and somebody gets bit, you know, a bulldog or a swimming dog like wrapped into a ball and gets hit. It's like, do you purposely do that every cast, or do you just scratch your
Oh
head and
God,
move
that would be
on, or
bad.
here's
you
another
know?
little fun story there. So Bob Benson back in the day told me he had his blades kept getting caught, like when you throw a supermodel in high wind and the winds or the big blades just get caught around the leader attachment.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
the blades weren't spinning and he was just jerking the thing trying to get it to come in and he had like a giant on vermilion eat it and get unpinned. So he went back that night and he built a whole bunch of these things that didn't have blades on them but just flash boost skirting. And he yeah, basically a bucktail with zero blades on it. So like build it up with zero blades
Like
because
a fly.
the blades weren't, yeah, like a fly essentially. And he tried like fishing it for, like days and because this enormous fish came and ate it when the blades weren't spinning and he was just jerking it and then he never saw a fish and he's like, all right, screw that. So what we
Thought
take
he
and
was
what
onto
we use
something.
as like super quality information from these fish sometimes I feel like is just literally pointless to put any
Yeah.
any credit
Right.
into.
Oh my goodness.
Uh,
Yeah, it's
so you
it's
brought up Vermilion. Oh, am I lagging?
No, you're
My
good.
internet.
you're just waving in
Just
the
said my
wind.
internet wasn't.
You're sitting on a beach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. I was gonna say, so you brought up Vermilion. I know you used to fish there quite a bit, but now you're jetting over to Minnesota, and We'll probably save some of the Minnesota stuff maybe when we have you on inevitably this winter again.
How long have you
But
been going?
how was it there this year? Am I? Yeah, I feel like I'm lagging. Am I lagging?
No, I think
No,
you're
you
good.
sound good.
Am I lagging for you? Okay.
Nope, sound good.
How was it this year in Minnesota on your short time there?
I mean, there really isn't that much to talk about, so I can pretty much wrap it up pretty quick. But I would say it was good. Every year I get to Minnesota, it's inevitable that the people that I talk to about the bite and ask how it's
Good.
been, they just say it's the toughest bite of the year. That's just how that's just how it times out every season. Um, but I was there for a week. Um, First day I fished by myself before I started guiding, got three, lost four others. Um, and then I think we boated 16 in 6 days of fishing. Biggest 52 and a half, had an 8 fish day. So but it wasn't like always good. Like it was again slightly elongated late summer. Temps were still in like the 71 to 76 range, like hot, flat, calm days, a couple good weather days. And there's one day, like first day guiding, we caught one, like second spot, little one, saw a handful of other fish, like literally a handful, maybe four or five, which felt like we should have seen way more because it was pretty prime. And then the next day, we had the 8 fish day, but the first three spots we didn't see any, and that was Moon. Moon ended, and the next 6 spots in a row we caught one, and then we went in for lunch, caught one first spot after that, and then drove to the way other side of the lake,
Hmm.
caught one after that. It was like, and there was like
What
no rhyme or reason. It was just like
I
fish
was
coming in and
That's
showing
wild.
blades, and
I was about to
all
say,
up.
is there like a special bait or is there a weather
It
to
was a
test to
ten
that?
nine
Or is
and
it
a
just
junior cowgirl. I was a waste of space behind these guys. It was the most
Just
fun ever,
mopping
dude.
up.
Dude, like it
That's
was
was
in the
awesome.
morning was like overcast, like just like a slight chop. First three spots in Moon, I'm like, dude, we're
hmm
gonna crush them because like I'd been there then for 2 days and knew where a bunch of fish were, and we go through those spots, and I was just like, okay, this isn't good. In
Yeah.
my head, I'm like, we just fished through Moon. We'll fish through where we seen fish. Nothing happened, and then we get to the next spot outside of Moon, 10:30 in the morning, and from 10:30 to 11:46 or something, we caught six, and I was just like unhooking fish, cutting hooks, putting hooks back on, and catching another one. Like it was like every 16 minutes for like an hour. It was stupid, dude. It was so
Jeez.
fun. And I didn't
That's
even
the
have a
best.
single thing behind my bait ever. And I was like, this is actually why I enjoy guiding. And all,
Yep.
all they wanted me to do was get in on the action too. I was just like, I want to catch one just so we can all have caught one, but
Yeah.
I didn't, which was fine. The one guy, these guys were awesome. They're from the area. Sea Bass and Stew. If they listen, shout out. Seabass
Shout out.
had yet
Shout
to
out
catch
Seabass and Stew.
Seabass had yet to catch a muskie, and he caught I think his first three ever and broke his
Oh my
every
God.
single time. So
That's a
now
good
he's
That's
good
45
start.
and a
wicked
half.
awesome.
Yeah, it was so
He's
fun.
Heck
And
ruined.
yeah.
then Stu was just absolutely murdering fish in the figure eight on the 10-9. And I was just like, Stu, take it easy, buddy. And that was
So
Crossing my
that
eyes.
that might be partial to this partial answer to this question, but I have been skewing a little negative tonight, so I wanted to maybe talk about some good stuff. What were some of the highlights for you this season during all your guide trips?
that was definitely one of them. That was like the most. And I kept saying it after every single fish. I just said, I don't know what's going on, guys, but let's just keep doing it. Like,
Yeah,
Mhm.
I, I think, I think again, the way that the season laid out and like the timing of like either bad weather or just weird stretches of water temps and then like expecting the moon to do something. There was just like strange few day windows that ended up being really good for whatever reason. So that was one of them. Um, there was one on the Fox chain. Actually, I had a blast fishing with Gus. If Gus could have not had to go speak, I think we would have cleaned house the afternoon of the day that
Oh
he
yeah,
left.
that's right.
Dude, that day was
They were trying to fire up on that
it was
front that
ridiculous.
rolled in.
That was fun, but I had one day with a good buddy of mine on the Fox chain that it was I think we caught like six and I don't think he had caught one. Dom, who Gus met, he hadn't I don't think
Tom's the
he'd caught
best.
one yet. Yeah. Shout out.
Shut up,
Shout out
Dom.
Dom.
But I don't think he'd caught one yet for the season, and I think he caught four that day, and
Jeez.
he was just
What a
like
hammer.
it was hilarious. We were having a ball, so that was like just one of those crazy weather days. It's like
Yeah.
rain, wind, sun, like clouds, and every fish was just eating our baits for some reason.
Nice.
Had a lot of I've had handful of PBs, one being sea bass. One of these guys, I had the first kid to have to get stitches in my boat.
Oh, what happened
Um,
there?
so here's the
Ruh-roh.
fun. So they're around our age, somewhere in there. And the one kid had caught like one or two, but they were like low 30s. And we go through the first spot on the chain, and there's just a pile of fish in this weed bed. And his buddy is two hole, and he had like six fish up, just attempting to eat his bait the whole time. The guy in the front, I have thrown a trigger, which is like literally still the best bait on the Fox chain ever, and he didn't see a single fish. So we get through that stretch, and I'm like, we got to go through that again because moon's starting and there's a zillion fish there, right? He's like, can I change baits? And I'm like, sure. So I just change it to a different color trigger. And he's like, I just don't want to throw this bait anymore. And I'm like, no, this is the one, right? So we get to the waypoint of this like mid 40s that had tried to eat his buddy's bait like five times during the retrieve. It was insane. This thing was the hottest fish I've ever seen. And he goes into the eight and the thing comes out of nowhere and swallows the trigger and we catch it and we're all jacked up. I unhook it and I give him a glove to hold the thing, and he's only caught a couple little ones. And for whatever reason, this fish just decides like he gets his hand kind of in the gill, and he goes like to pick it up, and the thing just decides to like open its mouth and like kind of I don't know how to describe it. You guys are seeing, but like I don't know, like
Mhm.
Yeah.
like pissed off, right? And
Yeah.
a tooth catches goes through the release glove and gets his thumb, right? And
Oh,
instantly I see blood, and I'm like, oh, I'm like, all right, like I'm like, he's like, ooh. So we go ahead, we take pictures, we release it, and he takes the glove off, and there is just a huge
mm.
gash in his thumb, like just deep as can be for the next 2 hours. He's sitting there just holding like we went through like three or four of those like Costco, glove or like towel things, and we got the thing taped up. We finished the day, and then like
What a
two
Warrior.
trooper.
hours after I drop him off the dock, his buddy sends me the picture of his thumb stitched up. He's like, "Yeah, 18 stitches later, he's all good." I was just
18.
like,
Oh my.
"Dude, yeah, that was pretty wild."
What?
That's
Yeah, so
wild.
like if he wouldn't have caught his PB and that really nice fish or whatever, I would have felt much worse. But good thing that's
Yeah.
how it kind of happened. That and then I did have my first guy fall out of the boat into the lake. Like
Oh no.
yeah, like two
How'd
weeks
that
Oh
go
ago.
down?
no.
Like 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
Oh,
damn.
okay.
So
So
this is
That's a
windy?
situation then. If it was two
oh
weeks ago, if it was cold.
there's a lot of situation to it, and thankfully it all went as well as it could have. But this is the longest story as short as possible. So God, I'm so bad with names, but this guy won a full day trip from one of the seminars that I'd given from, I think it was like Blackhawk Musky Club in Janesville. Um, and he is got to be in his mid to upper 70s. Like he was going through like really tough cancer stuff, like health issues, and so it took forever for me to or for him and I to end up lining up a date just because of health things. And finally,
Hmm.
he's on the back end of this chemo stretch, and he's feeling better, so we put it in the books. He's gonna come down and fish. So I'm like, I want to get this guy because he's a heck of a guy. I've talked to him a bunch. And so I'm like, I really want to get him a fish, right? So first spot, 15 minutes in, he sets the hook pike. we're kind of happy, but he's like, all right, no, no. Couple casts later, 43.5 inches, super thick. I'm like, heck yeah.
Nice.
Like, that's all I really wanted.
Nice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
Nice.
not that windy of a day. It's not that cold of a day, but water temps are like 58, 60, somewhere in there.
Cold. Yeah.
And so he's telling me the story how old guys always have their like pee cups, right? Which Gus, I'm sure you know about that. Like the old guys
Right.
that piss in their thing and then pour it over the side.
Yep.
So I mean, he's seen like his balance seems just fine. We had the butt seat up for him and everything. So he goes ahead and he's shooting the shit about the pee cup. He pees in the pee cup. He gets on all fours on my front deck to like pour it in, right? And we're just like starting a spot. And so all I like he's very safe and securely in the boat on all fours, pouring it over the side. So I take a
Mm-hmm.
cast. I'm looking forward, and then out of the corner of my eye, I just see like feet fly up. And I
Oh.
look over, and he is somersaulting into the lake. And
Oh.
this guy, like, we,
What?
we got we got full gear on. He's got giant boots. He's like 6'3" or 6'4",
Yeah,
like
that's
older
scary.
dude. Yeah, dude. So I'm
That's
like, I got a supermodel on, and I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like starting to try to crank this thing in. I'm like, there's no shot. So I just set the rod down. I run up front. I grab him. I'm like, I got you. I got you. And he's like looking at me like big eyed. And he has
What?
glasses on. The only thing that happened was his glasses must have hit him in the nose because like the bridge of his nose was slightly bleeding. So I like drag him along the side of the boat. We get him up in the back, all good. He's sitting there, calming down. I'm like, whew, that was wild. And
that's wild.
so he goes, oh, I just feel bad. But this must happen all the time, you know? And I just go, honestly, no. That was the first time it's ever happened. I said, you knocked that one off the list for me. And he was such a good sport and everything. We got him in and starts to dry or like, stand there and calm down. And I'm just like, if you wanted to go swimming, we could have went to the beach. And like so I figured the day was
Yeah.
done, right? Like the sun was going down at 6 or whatever by then.
Yeah.
And he's looking at me, and I'm like, all right, well, we'll just start like idling in. And he's like, no. He's like, we just got to the spot. And I was like, huh?
What a trooper.
Dude, we fished. He made
This
me fish
dude's
another
wild.
2 hours. And eventually I was like, he's like, good thing I didn't go in with my jacket on. At least that's dry. And he put the jacket on. I'm like, dude, he was,
God.
he was, he
What a
was awesome.
badass.
He
I
was, he
feel
was
I
awesome.
feel bad laughing at the beginning, but that's a pretty insane story. I mean,
Oh,
that's
it,
pretty
it was
yeah.
so
This
funny.
dude
Him and I laughed
seems awesome. Yeah.
so much at
Yeah.
the end of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
God.
mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of other stories that would be the last one.
Remind me to never complain when I'm cold.
Dude, seriously, I don't. This guy was freaking like. I mean, I wasn't like warm and I was dry, and I was like, dude, we don't like have to be here. You already did it, like you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the
Job's
last one, I'll
finished.
make it quick because this is
Job
hilarious.
finished.
So
Yeah. He's
one client from Minnesota. He's actually from around here, but he hired me again. Like it was an extra 2 days. While I was up in Minnesota, he like flew out, gets there. He shows up on the day of the eight fish day. So those guys, Stu and Seabass are done. I'm like, screw it. You're sitting in your hotel. I'm like, come back out. We'll go fish for 2 or 3 hours after sunset. I'm like, if they're going, they're going. Nothing happens, right? Of course. So then the next day, we catch one little one and see like a 48 incher. That's it the whole day. And then we fish from like sunrise to noon and nothing happened. And I'm like, okay. So the year prior, this almost exact same scenario happened, and we went to uh, another lake at like 5 p.m. on the last day of his trip, and he hadn't caught a 50 yet. We'd caught some other fish, but that's what we're looking for when we're in Minnesota. Well, anyway, that's when all of my Lexus broke on all of his hook sets. One of the fish we ended up making to the boat was a 50 3/4, but he lost two others that were well into the 50s. And if the reels wouldn't have
Jesus.
broke, he would have caught all three. Well, same scenario happened, except for it was now 12:30 when we left that lake. We show up at the other lake. First spot, 10 casts in, 52.5. Same bait he caught the
Hmm.
50 3/4 on last year. And I'm like, dead middle of the day, sunny, windier than can be,
Wow.
first spot I go to. I'm like, dude, you are the lucky, you have a horseshoe so
I need
It
to.
was it
Yeah,
was
Uh,
insane. I'm like, we might as well
stuck
just get off
somewhere.
this lake right now. But then the fish we saw like 30 minutes later absolutely dwarfed the 52.5. It was so
oh,
stupidly big. Like it was disgusting. It looked like a cow's head. Like it
oh,
had like
damn.
giant eyes and like freaking filled out lips. And I was just like, dude, that thing, I don't know. We just released 52.5 and that one like looks like it would eat it.
That's scary.
Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of the
Yeah.
fun part about being on some of those Minnesota waters, though. It's just you just never know what you're
Don't know
gonna
what you're gonna
get.
see out there.
No, that one
Yeah.
was the funniest part about that one was I marked it on side imaging and I had spun the boat around to cast towards it. And as I'm going into the eight, like a 34 incher eats me in the eight, and I was like, pops off. I'm like, that was not the fish that I just side imaged. And then he
Hmm.
goes, no, it's right there. And it was just coming up, surfacing 10 feet in front of us, looking at us. I
Oh,
swear to God, its eye came out of the water and it just looked at us and then just swam down. And I was just like,
wow.
dude, that thing is the size of a whale. Yeah, it was hilarious. But yeah, no, it's been a really fun season. It's been a grindy season. Feels like it's been forever. Started in early March down in Kincaid.
Yeah. Yeah,
Was
you've been
over a month and a
going
half
ham for a
probably.
long time.
So yeah,
Yeah.
been a season.
That's a
And with
long
Geneva,
time.
you get, you probably have a good, I don't even know. I mean, this
Till
rate,
December 31st or 30th or whatever the last day of
Yeah,
December
well,
is.
without a doubt, we'll have open water all the way until then.
Yeah,
huh?
the 31st.
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't booked any dates in December yet, but literally, it's we'll be able to fish the whole time through. So there's definitely going to be handful of some stupid sized fish left to be caught out there.
Love
Hell
to
yeah.
hear it.
Yeah. Then maybe you boys got to take a little drive south.
You
Just thinking
already,
that in my head,
you
I'm like,
already know where.
up here is gonna wrap up usually around Thanksgiving on a given year. There's probably stuff open through December 1st,
Oh,
in the first week. Do I want to do that up here? Maybe. Is my boat could be winterized? Probably. So there ain't
yeah, we,
much going
we got a lot
on.
of season left down here, which it sounds almost terrible, but like I've already switched the mindset to like you gotta just push hard and get because some of the fish on Geneva this time of year just look like balloons, and I've yet to get a real big one in late fall, and this fall is the fall.
It's gonna be the one. Oh
Oh, it's
yeah.
I
gonna be
love
I
it.
so
could I could
stupid
Yeah,
see it
good.
happening. It's
Yeah.
the year of
I
the big
love it.
fish. A lot of big
Yep.
fish falling this year, so
Yep.
I don't know. I could see it happening.
Yeah, love it.
Man,
It's gonna.
It'd be a great way to cap off the season. It's always nice to end on a high note.
Yeah, last year I ended it with only three of the four trailer tires being on my trailer when I showed up to the launch on December 10th. So this year I think I'll try ending it with a big fish instead of less
and
tires on
and a
my trailer.
and a boat on a trailer
Yeah.
down the
I
Yeah.
road.
love it. I'm with you, man. This conversation has been rejuvenating for me. I'm ready to get back out
You're
there.
back.
I'm ready to get back out
You're
there
back,
now.
Max.
I'm ready to break my heart again. I'm
Fall
ready for
fishing
it.
is so fun.
Yeah.
At least the days are shorter. That's the only thing I'm
That's a
happy with.
great
Like if
Yeah.
they were still that long, dude, I would really not like it.
yeah, right. If there's any silver lining, if it's slow, you can get to the bar by six
Yeah, I mean,
30.
if I had to fish, like, I mean, sometimes like today I got in the truck and I'm driving home. I'm like, dude, usually I fish like another 5.5 hours. I'm like, dude, that sounds
Yeah.
terrible.
Right.
No kidding. No
Well,
kidding.
Gus, you got anything else for Austin? He's been very gracious with his time here with us
You mean
tonight.
Brian?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
We could
yes, Brian. Brian, you
yeah.
know way more about musky fishing than I remember.
Well, it's just like my mood tonight for some reason. It just
Yeah,
just feels I just feel rejuvenated, if you
there
will.
you go. There you go.
That's awesome. I don't know if I have anything. I mean, man, we could crawl down many rabbit holes. I mean, as always, we thank you for your time, Austin, but we'll have you on, of course, another
Yeah,
time this
I
winter.
appreciate
Big
that. Just
time.
I swear to God, if Brian's not there, I'm not gonna say I'm not
Some
gonna do it, but I'm gonna definitely have an issue with Brian now.
I think it's only fair. I mean, Let's get
It
Yeah,
on
might be
there.
him. It might be
actually,
him.
you
I
know
don't
what?
know.
We have to just only do it on his schedule if I'm ever coming on again. I,
There you
I
go.
can't I can't
We got
do
to
it
plan it way in
over him.
advance.
It's just sad. I just want the whole four, screens popped up.
Yep.
I know.
We need
I know. Oh God, that kid. Tell you what.
we need
Uh,
we need somebody to ask if you're going to go to Canada, you know.
oh God, come on.
He's not
Come
here,
on.
so we can, you know. Sorry,
Uh,
Brian. I don't know if you'll even begin to this part of
it's a
this podcast.
great
I just
inside
hope he's
joke.
sleeping really well and he's gonna wake up feeling like $1 million. Otherwise, yeah.
Yep.
Uh, one of the funnier running inside jokes we have on our podcast with Brian is we'll be talking about like, what's your preferred bait in end of June? Brian will just chime in like 20 minutes in the interview. So, you going to Canada this year or what's going on? It's like 4 weeks in a row. I was like, Brian, you can ask people if they're gonna fish other places in Canada.
It's Canada, man. You can't go wrong with Canada.
No, you can't. You can.
Just
Yeah.
do- That's fun.
It's just me.
Well, they get a lot of people that go to Canada and a lot of people that take week-long vacations. So, it's good
We
to
have
talk
learned
about it,
so
but
much about Canada starting this
it's
podcast that it's like we got to get up there and make it a point to do it next year.
Yeah, I need to get there too, actually.
Yeah.
Brian, I'm not hating on you on the Canada thing, but yeah, definitely need to go. I've been saying it for years now.
Well, let's make a trip of it. I mean, we threatened to fish together this summer at Tonka. I think you were going to swing by and it didn't work out.
Yeah,
So,
which I should have honestly, but I that drive is so damn long. I was so ready to get it done.
yeah,
oh God,
I
yeah.
I
And
feel you
I
having
don't blame
there.
you at
seasonal
all for
stuff.
it.
Yeah. But I do want to ask one question. What's the one bait you guys have caught your most muskies on this year?
I think
Go
I can
around the
say
horn.
confidently it's probably the Medusa. Do I have to say what size? It's
No.
the Medusa, I think, mid and reg. Medusa. I'll try and think a little bit more or look at some pictures, but
I don't think
overall,
I've caught
that
a single
fish,
muskie on a Medusa this year.
you didn't?
I don't think so.
Holy, dude, this year was like we didn't catch a single fish
I
on a
almost
mag
got one
dog
today
this
on
year,
one, actually.
and we didn't catch a single fish on a reg dog. It was all, I mean, I guess, the pit bull came out and we
Yeah,
used a lot
Pitbull
of
kind
that.
of took over.
Yeah, we used that quite a bit, which is why we didn't really catch any on mag dogs or reg dogs, but the Medusa still honestly just. And for bucktail, I don't know if there was a one bucktail. I mean, there was a double eight that we had that caught a ton of fish in like July and August
I
and
was
a
kind
little
of
bit of
expecting like a
September.
Hunsey tail or something.
The Hunsey tails were really
Yeah.
good. I didn't quite get on a kick like Taylor Flannery got on, but there was all of a sudden in September, that was the only bucktail they were eating, basically. I don't know if you used them much.
I my Dom got a few. They are pretty cool actually. I love the idea of it. I
They're
added like the
awesome.
whole ticker idea concept, the back of tubes and a bunch of other things, which I've been
hmm
playing with, which has been fun.
I've been playing around with the
Hmm.
ticker and other things and haven't found any success. It's just on the back of that bucktail. The Hunsey tail's been getting it done.
After dark rubber attachment.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. No, it makes sense.
Don't tell anybody, but tell everybody that listens.
Yeah. It's hunting season. I'm just tuning in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nobody's
No.
fishing.
What about you,
Yeah, right.
Max? I'm trying to think on your behalf too.
Yeah, I kind of went in waves.
You
I
caught a
had a
good
wave.
bit on bucktails in the summer.
Yeah, I had a wave of bucktail fish. And then caught like a handful of tube fish, handful of Medusa fish this year, and a couple on the Bam Bam. Um, I didn't have like any
There wasn't like one
real
standout.
MVP. Yeah, it was one of those years, right? I kind of did a lot. I tried to do a lot of experimenting this year with baits. Couple on trying to think if I have had any crankbait fish this year. Because usually I would get a good amount of crankbait fish early in the year. And Gus, did I catch any on a crankbait this year? I'm trying to remember.
I don't think you did. I didn't really do that great, honestly,
Yeah.
either. Early in the year, I lost a couple on like a small grandma or
There's
slammer,
Depth Raider, baby.
and then the freaking depth raider. That
Yeah.
that catches fish every year. So,
Go join Depth Raider after dark, baby. Just doesn't fail.
Yeah. No.
Just the
oh,
doesn't
No.
the
fail.
boot
What about
daddy.
we'll end the pod with what your bait MVP of the year was.
I think that the most fish in my boat on a single bait was a 10-9, but I think personally it's a pretty good chalk up between a 10-9 and a detonator.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like I went through two super black detonators again this year where they just get so screwed up and then eventually the supermodel blade falls off and somehow the one 10-9 I rebuilt twice and somehow the blades I just must have done it at a perfect time where the blade and clevis hadn't broken at some point. But
Dang.
yeah, there's one 10-9 that's just caught so many fish. It was like it started probably well, it probably didn't start with Seabat or Stew, but started from May all the way until last week. So
Hmm.
it's been pretty interesting. But yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was pretty interested to know that. But yeah, definitely a 10-9 overall for my boat.
A bait that did make a comeback for me this year was just an old double A bucktail. I had a run of fish on a double A bucktail, and I was like, man, I have not had. I know Gus, uses them and whatnot a good bit up north
They
still, but
caught so many fish
this year the
guiding.
double eight for us was
Caught zero
freaking
fish
money.
again this year on the double eight.
Jeez, that's wild.
I
We didn't
just
And
catch
got
any
nice
on, caught none on triggers this year.
oh God. I guess
two years
It's
ago. That
crazy.
was
I don't think I did either. But like it's also like when that stuff starts to get hot, I'm never the one throwing it, which kind of is like the
right.
toughest part.
Well,
Yeah.
if you're the third bait through, you're
Yeah.
typically
Well,
probably
that's like
or
me with,
second or third.
Medusa being the MVP, but like overall, the
Yeah.
bucktails caught more fish this year for sure.
Mhm.
You know,
That's the only
uh,
reason I think I ever end up catching a fish on a 10-9 or a detonator is just because it's bigger than the two bucktails in front of me, and then I randomly end up
Right.
catching
mhm.
one. And then when that gets hot and I have to hand it up, I'm like, all right, well, supermodel or no blade.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. All
Well,
right. Well, where can people reach you if they want to go and catch a Geneva slob in December or late November here?
yeah, I got a lot of dates left for the end of November, and like I said, I haven't booked any for December, and most of that's just usually waiting to see how the weather times out. But
Hmm.
they can contact me directly, 815-575-3468. Um, that's if you text or call me, I'll always get back to you. Otherwise, Facebook, Instagram, um, my name. I don't really have a guide page still somehow. Otherwise, if you follow Fish with Teeth Outdoors, I randomly get on those socials as well. But yeah, just call or text me. Definitely best way to get a hold of me. And yeah, fair amount of dates left in November. Lots of the season left. Still, like I said, solid 55 everywhere across that lake. So it's almost like fall's kind of about to begin underwater.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's like our mid to early October up here. So you
From
guys
what I,
are,
'cause I
it's
looked
just
at
beginning.
I looked at like fall notes before we got on, and I want to say like last few falls, it seems like we're like 4 to 9 degrees depending on the body of water behind. So like
Sure. Yeah.
really it's about 51-ish on Geneva here now, and there's been, a handful of falls on smaller lakes that it's already 46, 44.
Yeah. I mean, we're just about getting up to speed here. I'd still say we're maybe a little bit behind, but I looked back at like 2021 notes and in what was it? October in particular, we had yeah, it was 2021.
Yeah, that
Was it
that fall
then?
was super
Yeah.
warm. Yep.
Oh God, yeah. I was gonna say we
Yeah.
had 60 degrees through mid-October
Yep.
and we had a stretch of multiple days in the 70s on like October 17th, 18th, and 19th, and then it just fell off a cliff, and the water went from 50 like 5 to 57 starting before that, and it just plummeted right to like 50 to 52 very quickly, and then shot below 50 relatively quickly too, and it looked like it was good.
Yeah, like
Good
October
fishing.
23rd or 21st of 2021, we caught one after dark on a trigger, and it was like water temps for like 64 still here.
Yeah, freaking wild. But
Yep.
no, we're about on track again. I mean, it's gonna be, I would assume the Cisco spawn during the full moon, which I haven't looked when that is.
That's
In a
in
week maybe?
5 days, I think, for you guys, or for
Five
everybody.
days?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's probably gonna happen. I mean, I was on a relatively large system today and that was 44 to 45 degrees. So we're pretty much there and it's cold until then, so
Yeah.
temps will still drop. Not a lot though. Um, but
Yeah, the only thing I see with our system is just like there will actually be patterns and stability that are in our future. That's what I'm looking
that's
forward to.
good.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, right now it's a trying bite like we've mentioned, but the rest of the
Instead,
fall should be continuously more and more predictable, patternable fish, which I'm excited for.
which is just normal post turnover
Yeah,
decreasing temps is what that pattern is. I mean, I know we kind of got into it already, but like that when the weather's not doing anything and the temps are staying the same, that's like what you want in the summer, not in the fall. You want them plummeting, not exactly plummeting. You just want them getting
directionally moving
colder.
down. Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
that's the pattern. So,
Yep.
okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for your time tonight, Austin. Thanks for filling in, the big shoes of Brian Eckel, dropping a lot of knowledge bombs tonight. Fantastic season, great hearing all the success stories this year, but you're not over. It's not over. You got December yet. You got the rest of November.
Yep.
We'll stay in touch, especially about a December send or something like that.
Let's
Would
do it,
be
boys. For
would be
sure.
pretty nifty. I'll be around. I don't really like ice fishing until after the New Year's anyways. Honestly, I'm not a first ice type of guy. And yeah, I
Well,
don't
as
know.
usual, I appreciate you guys having me on again. I don't think I
Hmm.
came anywhere close to filling the shoes of Brian. Those dogs are some big dogs. And I
Oh,
was I was
oh,
kind
oh.
of limping in them. But yeah, again, appreciate it. Fun as always. And yeah, let's definitely find time to get out this fall.
Let's do it. Hey Gus, real quick, do you want to just drop your socials so we can just put a bow on this one and call her a night?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, after that, I have no idea if Austin will be able to do the Brian outro. I can't. Max, I have no idea if you're up for the task tonight at all, but
Nah, we'll just let him. We'll save it for next week. What do you
we'll
say?
make him
He'll be
have to do
pent
it
up.
like an extra like 20 seconds longer. Like when he thinks he's done, we'll have to make him go a little bit longer. Okay, so Muskie's on tap. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook now. Be sure to give a like and follow. We made a Facebook page. Also, my guide service, which is Suggs Fishing Guide Service, is on Instagram and Facebook. Suggs is just SUGS. Website is www.sugsfishing.com. And on there, we have the Muskies on Tap hats out and available to order. So if you're looking for those, check those out. That'd be much appreciated. Rep the Mott gear. And yeah, I think that's it. So I think that wraps up another week of Muskies on Tap here, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.